if ivermectin, for instance, if it really is helpful, what benefit, what incentive does Joe Biden and the Democratic platform have in suppressing that news if it's true? Why would they? Why?
Well, so you're asking me to speculate about what's going on inside their minds, which of course I have no access to, right? I think, an easy, obvious answer is that ivermectin is currently off patent. It's available for about $3 a dose, and nobody's making any money from it, right? And so the people who have their hands on the levers of power right now, many of them also have financial stakes in, pharmaceutical companies and things like that. Now, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I don't know. I have no way of knowing. What we can perceive, though, is it seems irrational from the outside, and we also know they're not explaining why. Right? They're, when they call ivermectin a horse dewormer, that's insulting everybody who's listening. We all know that that's the last thing that it is. It just in 2015 they gave that drug, which has been available since the 70s. In 2015 they gave it the Nobel Prize in medicine.
The Nobel Prize, right?
Not for
because of the incredible benefit that drug has produced for horses. Nobel Prize, right? It was because of the horses, right? They just love horses so much. They're like, let's give it a Nobel. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And I love your sarcastic sense of humor. And so we can all see that nobody's being fooled by these silly, media narratives. And I don't think, Joel, I don't think those media narratives are for people like you and me. I think those media narratives are for the people who are terrified of COVID, right? And they need something, and they accept anything that the CDC says. The CDC is their source of truth, right? They call it the gold standard. And whatever the CDC says, no matter how many times it reverses itself, or, the New York Times at times has had to debunk the CDC, like with the outdoor transmission thing, right? The New York Times called them out on that, right? And NPR called them out on saying that the Delta variant was as transmissible as chickenpox. It's not even close, right? So the CDC can say all of these things that are, factually inaccurate. What do we call people who say things that aren't true?
False prophets, liars.
You said it. I didn't say it. So
bearing false witness. Yeah, I could go on. Yeah.
Unreliable at best. And,
that's right.
But that doesn't seem to bother half the population in this country. No matter how many times the CDC reverses direction, gets caught saying something that isn't true, intentionally or unintentionally, right? If they did it unintentionally, they're negligent. That's not better, right? If you crash into somebody in your car because you're not paying attention and kill them, are you going to walk away from it because it was an accident? Because you just made a mistake? Are you off the hook? No, of course not, right? And so why is the CDC off the hook for being negligent about the information that it's providing to us about the worst pandemic in our lifetimes?
Right.
So, you're asking me, I think there's a bigger answer to your question. And that is that I don't think we're really dealing with a medical problem. I don't think we're dealing with a biological problem. I don't think we're dealing with a scientific problem. I think what we're really dealing with is a spiritual problem. I believe that there is a demonic spirit of fear that is suffocating the earth. And it is providing a strong delusion to a lot of people, right? The people who are wearing double masks outside.
Right. Yeah.
Right? How do you explain that? And the politicians who are doing things that everybody knows are irrational and don't work. We know lockdowns don't work. We know lockdowns actually kill people in greater numbers than COVID ever will. And yet they're still ordering lockdowns and still talking about lockdowns. How is that possible? Right? It's because there is not rational thought that's going on. It's a kind of possession. It's a possession by a spirit of fear. And the problem is, if only, Joel, if only we had some kind of organization, some kind of maybe worldwide network that was devoted to dealing with spiritual problems, and we could just somehow activate that organization to fight back.
What if it closed down? Shouldn't have.
Yes, it shouldn't have.
We need the church. You're right. We need the church. Yeah. I can't help but think of, I think, I can't remember if this was in your article, Jeff, but Hebrews 2, I believe it's verses 14 and 15, somewhere in there. But Hebrews chapter 2, where it says that, speaking of Christ, it says that he too partook of the same nature. He put on flesh in the likeness of man, so that he could die, so that through his death, he might conquer him who has authority over death, that is the devil, and free, it says, and free those who were held in lifelong slavery to the fear of death. So Jesus took on flesh so that he could die, so that through his death he could conquer the one who has authority over death, the devil, and free lifelong slaves who the chains that are binding them and holding them in this lifelong slavery is fear of death. And I read that and I think, okay, yeah, that's a depiction of the pagan, the unbeliever, the person who does not know and love Christ. But then when I'm witnessing this as a pastor in real time, and I can see very little distinction between believers and unbelievers in terms of how afraid they are, and very little distinction between talking heads with CNN and talking heads, pastors who are now live streaming their churches. Then all of a sudden I'm just like, is this even real? Like, are we doing this or not? Are we following Jesus? Are we, because I thought it was for real. I thought this whole Jesus thing, being a Christian, I thought this was real. And it turns out I've been sorely mistaken. The last 18 months, I've realized that, for a lot of people, it's just a game. It's just a religious social club. They're not following Jesus for real. And, that doesn't mean that some people might not be weak faith. So that doesn't mean they're all false converts. There is such a thing as the weak convert, right? The smoldering wick, the bruised reed. And Christ is tender and merciful towards them. And so we don't need to just beat them all up, but it is disheartening. It is discouraging. And we need pastors you don't just coddle the smoldering wick, right? So you don't snuff it out, but you also don't leave it there either. You blow on it and fan it into flame. You stir it up. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, would you consider supporting this ministry by giving a donation of any amount? You can do so by going to our website, rightresponseministries.com. Let's be frank. Sadly, many evangelical pastors and leaders are serving as nothing more than water carriers for the political left. Just as those in the political left hate you, just like those corporations that are left-leaning hate you, these pastors and evangelical leaders hate you. I know that's a strong statement to make. I'm aware of that, but it's true. They don't care about your personal liberty. They don't care about your freedom. They want you to love your neighbor at the expense of biblical truth, even if it means bearing false witness. That's not us. We're different. We're not the only ones. I don't want to be arrogant. God has reserved a remnant for himself in this time, as he has all other ages and all other places, but they are few and far between. It's called a remnant for a reason. We need your help. We want to stand up to tyranny. We want to stand up to this new left totalitarian regime. We want to defend Christians and people, the salt of the earth, who love America and who love God's word. But we can't do it without your help. If you're not prepared or able to give a financial gift, one way that you can support this ministry is by simply subscribing to our YouTube channel and clicking the bell so that you'll be notified as we come out with new content. You can also help us by sharing our content on all your social media platforms so that more people can hear the truth of God's word with courage and fidelity. Thanks for tuning in. God bless.